Welcome, and thank you for joining us today in our session entitled MasterMinds, Lessons in Leadership. I am privileged and honored to have with me Michael Levy, who is a dear friend and the Chief Executive Officer of Kroll Holdings. So, Michael, welcome.
Great to be here, Bill.
So with that, I'd like to get into a few questions, if we could. And some of the audience may know more about Kroll Holdings, some may know less, but give the audience a sense of Kroll Holdings today and its positioning in the industry.
Kroll Holdings, we are a diversified investment firm with a core focus on real estate investment and development. We've been at this 75 years. We're a private family-owned business. I think our culture reflects that, and we've done a lot of things over a long period of time. I think today you look at our company and you highlight a number of elements. One, we are a local business. We have offices in 20 cities from coast to coast. We have boots on the ground across the U.S. I think that's helpful when you're in the hard asset business. We approach the markets more from a Main Street, relationship-oriented real estate business that has met the global capital markets over time, as opposed to a capital markets enterprise that's moved into the real estate space. I think that permeates how we think about the world, who our people are, where our areas of value add are in the business. We pursue sectors that are focused on secular growth. I don't do a good job of guessing where the capital markets are going or where the economy's going or where stock prices or interest rates, but we're really focused on secular themes that we can underwrite and stand behind. Things like where are people moving to in the country, and things like demographics and other elements that define the secular trends that we pursue. We're also a company focused on aggregating and curating portfolios one by one. So as you look at us as an investor, you're going to find us focused on building out one by one large portfolios that ultimately are attractive to the largest possible audience. And so there are a number of elements of how we approach the market, but fundamentally at its core, we're a Main Street real estate investment and development firm.
And you joined the firm in 2016, as I remember?
Yep, at the end of 2016.
Okay. And so you've been at this now arguably 7 years-ish. How have you transformed the business?
So notwithstanding my point earlier that we are a Main Street firm that's approached the business through the real estate and met the capital markets, my background was in the capital markets. The background of the people at the company were in the real estate business. And so I think that perhaps the biggest impact I've had is bringing some of that thinking that developed through working in a place like New York, working for large financial institutions, and bringing some of the more prolific capital markets elements, because this business, as we all know, is two sides of a coin. One is the real estate and the other side is the capital. And through that, there's been a focus on enhancing the relationships we have with investors around the world. There's been a focus on some additional strategies that we've developed in the real estate space. Ultimately, we've benefited from a strong environment for the areas we're focused on over the past 6 or 7 years, and we've been able to grow the business not only in the things that we already did, but in new investment strategies and some new development strategies that we weren't pursuing before. We've also diversified the business. And we're now in the energy business as well as the real estate business. Obviously, the real estate business, far surpasses anything that we're doing today in the energy business. But we're in the process of building out an energy vertical to continue to diversify and expand the firm.
Mm-hmm. Tell the audience a little bit about your background prior to Kroll.
I'm a lifelong New Yorker who wound up talking my way into a job in investment banking. I got thrown into the real estate group. I ran with that for over a decade through a variety of forces. I spent most of the career at Morgan Stanley. Through a variety of forces. At the age of 40, I shifted from investment banking to real estate investment management side of the business. I then spent what I'd call the second half of my career there focused on the investment management industry. And then after 18 years at the firm, I met Harlan Crow and made the decision to take the leap to Dallas, Texas.
Mm-hmm. So you went from institutional to entrepreneurial.
Yeah, huge change.
Yeah.
And
how challenging was that?
It wasn't challenging. When one of the nice things when you worked in real estate in these large investment banks, I started my career. I was going to law school at night. I worked for Prudential Securities. So they gave me my first shot at investment banking, and I worked for a little while for Solomon Brothers, and I worked for Morgan Stanley. When you were in real estate in these firms, you always were the redheaded stepchild of these firms. And so you could form your own culture and your own group. And if you had good leadership and good people running the business, it could be a wonderful culture to work in. So I did have a different environment than perhaps the large institution. Now, as I went on post-2008, as Morgan Stanley became a bank, everything changed. And so the shift from Morgan Stanley to Crow in terms of the culture of the firm was wildly different at that point in time. But I had a lot of good, they weren't family, but a lot of good experiences working for small, tight groups of people along my career. So that's the first thing I'd say. Mm-hmm. But leaving the institution and joining Crow, I felt like I had a straitjacket removed from me. That I could be me, that I could represent my creative energies the way that I saw things, the way that I believed was the right thing to do, that the business wasn't being run by various committees of all stripes, that the ability to shake someone's hand was subject to this committee, that group, this approval. When I joined Crow, ultimately the buck stops with your handshake. And I found that to be enlightening. I embraced it tremendously, and it was easy to step into. Mm-hmm. And look, it's a great culture here. It's honorable people. It's very easy place for me to feel welcome. And I know on paper it perhaps doesn't make sense. You've got this New York, Wall Street, Jewish guy coming down to Crow, family business, Main Street, Wall Street. But fundamentally, it was a great fit. It was easy.
Yeah, it's interesting because unlike a lot of people, you played on both the advisory side and the principal side. And how do you think Morgan Stanley trained you for what you're doing today?
The neat thing about the advisory side was that you get to see business done through the eyes of a variety of different successful management teams. You have such a broad lens in that business. You really get to see that there's not one way to do things, that there's many different ways to do things. And I really benefited from that. Also, being on that side of the business, you're trained around your clients. You're very client-focused in that side of the business. And so I think that the training of one, being client-focused, two, seeing a broad swath of the marketplace and understanding different perspectives was great training. I think on the principal investing side, as things shifted in 2008 for me, when the world went a bit upside down, that really taught me the elements of taking risk, of living with those decisions, of looking in the eyes of your investment partners and delivering for them or not delivering for them. And so I think those two different experiences on the advisory side and the principal side ultimately culminated to make me what I am today, for good or for bad.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think it's generally for good.
I also, Morgan Stanley and the firms before it, most of my career things were good. I came out of law school in 94, and from 94 through 2008, in general, with a couple of hiccups, things were pretty good. Mm-hmm. But 2008, 2009, things weren't very good. And the firm had tremendous challenges. And I learned so much during those few years of restructuring assets, funds, businesses. I learned more during that period of time than I did in many, many years of good days. And so a deep, pronounced global financial crisis is a great training ground.
Yep.
It's not fun to live through, but it's a great training ground.
In retrospect.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I knew
Go ahead.
I knew at the time it was great for me. I was blessed that the activities I was engaged in leading up to that on the investment banking or the advisory side didn't tag me with responsibility for some of the challenges that were uncovered in the 08-09 period. The billions of dollars that were losses. And so I was engaged in helping try and address those problems and resurrect the business. And so I didn't have the emotional context the emotional baggage of being stuck with all of those what turned out to be bad decisions. And I could just embrace and engage in trying to fix things. And so I knew at the time that what I was going through was a great experience for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I totally get that for sure. But what you did bring to Crow was you brought a capital market sophistication and appreciation for what LPs are looking for in a fiduciary. And the nice thing was you moved from an allocator to more of an owner-operator, which is kind of where the world is today. So it did train you well, maybe unbeknownst to you, relative to what you would do next, for sure.
Oh, look, absolutely. On the investment banking side and working globally, understanding all of the different capital markets, private and public, and all of them as options. Sometimes we look at our business and I'll say to myself, what would the Singapore REIT market think of this? Bringing that type of, and I use that as an example, but bringing that type of background, not because anything I did was particularly unique. It's just that was the background that I had and brought to a company that largely, and certainly all of the leadership team, had not grown up in the capital markets. They'd grown up in the real estate markets. And
right.
So yes, bringing those things were very valuable to Crow at that point in time.
Yeah. I mean, anticipating how the investors would respond is, I think, obviously an important criterion in building a successful GP for sure. So it's a good thing. Michael, I've been doing this business a long time, right? This CEO succession stuff. And I would say, going back to 2022 into 2023, it's the first time in my history where I have had a number of people say, you know what? I'm not interested in being a CEO. I'm uncomfortable with the volatility of the world. Things are popping up on the screen that I didn't anticipate. I couldn't anticipate. Obviously don't understand how it's going to impact the business. The world is so intrusive, social media, activists, there's nothing I can say or do that's not going to end up somewhere. With that as a backdrop, given the macroeconomic environment we're in globally, the geopolitical environment that we're in globally, how are you leading this organization?
I never really thought about things from the perspective you just said. Things have gotten so scary and so volatile that people don't want these seats. But be that as may, I will tell you, friends of mine who are in these seats at public companies have a different level of scrutiny and have experienced some things out there being a public company CEO that would make me question sometimes that as well. But in the private context, perhaps there's one level down from some of those concerns that are in the background or the foreground there. Look, the thing I came to realize a long time ago, early in my career, was we all seek certainty. We're all seeking soothsayers who are going to tell us that they know what the future holds, and no one has a clue. Mm-hmm. I started in the business in 1994, and Ralph Acampora, who was a technical strategist for Prudential-based securities at the time, came up with these charts and graphs showing me what the future was. And I spent years listening to the highest paid people in the world tell me they could foresee the macroeconomic and capital markets future that was ahead of me. And I realized pretty quickly that ultimately they're far more wrong than they're right. And so I know that I don't know geopolitically where the world's going to be in 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now. I know that I don't know from an macroeconomic perspective where things are going to be right. I mean, Jay Powell in December of 2021 said that inflation for 2022 was going to be 2.7%. If people like him can't guess 1 year out, what makes me think I'm going to guess? And while things are moving faster and perhaps there feels like more volatility in the world, this has been with us for a long time. And so fundamentally on these questions, I come to the fact that I know I don't know. And so the question is, how do you run your business? How do you optimize your business when you know you don't know? Mm-hmm. Well, one of the first things you need to do is get a lot of the noise away from you. You can spend all day long in various forms of media just consuming massive amounts of noise with respect to these questions. pull back from that and really think about the business that you're in and what are you going to do to optimize it. And that's generally how I approach it. And then I fall back on things that I have more security in. So when it comes to the real estate, from a strategy perspective on what to invest in or what to develop, aren't there some things that are obvious? Isn't it obvious that this e-commerce thing is a train we could see coming and a train that's going to continue to run for years to come? Isn't it obvious that America is going through some degree of onshoring and nearshoring that's going to affect distribution and the scale of industrial in our country? Isn't it obvious from a demographic perspective and a housing perspective that we need more rental housing? Isn't it obvious that people are moving to the Southeast and Southwest? And so instead of trying to guess where interest rates are going to be from 6 months from now or where bond prices are going to be, I'm focused on those type of macro secular trends and how do we get positioned in good markets, and then behind that, just watch your leverage and have plenty of cash. And so that's how I address the volatility that you articulated.
Yeah, it's an interesting point of view. So really understand what's going on, from demographic and other perspectives, and then try to figure out how does that impact the business. Just
trends and forces that have some ability to accurately forecast them.
Right.
Not these things that no one knows. And yet a lot of money is spent by a lot of people every day to come out and tell you that they know where these things are going. It keeps us all hanging on a hook, waiting to hear the next word out of someone. But when you look at the facts, they're far more wrong than they're right. And so why do you want to follow that? And then you're going to form your own point of view that I can do a better job of guessing inflation than Jay Powell. If he can't get it right, what makes me think I can get it right? So work within the forces and the capital markets that are there today. Base yourself on strong secular trends of growth and opportunity. We're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes. Wouldn't you rather be playing in a pie that's growing than a pie that's shrinking? So the mistakes you make get exacerbated. Those are the fundamental tenets that we're hanging on to, that I'm hanging on to as a business person. But in our business of real estate, don't forget those last two. Watch your leverage and have plenty of cash, because you can get a lot of that right. But if you're too highly levered or if you don't have enough cash, you can get wiped out.
Mm-hmm. So if you take that and narrow it down further, take it from the macroeconomic, the geopolitical, to our business, and you look at the balance of 2023, 2024, and as you said, you learned a lot from 2008, 2009, right? So what do you see as the challenges and the opportunities in the industry over the next 18, 24 months?
Well, look, the opportunities, first of all, thank goodness we are an illiquid asset class that actually takes human beings to add value and do things with. So one is, aren't we glad that we're in this business and not going to be replaced by robots or computers anytime soon? So that's a great opportunity. The second thing is, God bless that we live in the United States. It's a country with a buoyant and resilient economy. For all our problems, a transparent overall system, and an attractive place for the world to continue to invest in. So I think those two things create the opportunity for all of us, to take one step down from there. Obviously, we're all talking about the office business and the challenges in that business. And the challenges far out surpass the opportunities. I think in that business, the opportunity is at the margin with respect to those companies that are seeking collaborative, open, sustainable space, that the employees want to work there and the corporations who are signing the leases are able to meet their carbon objectives. Mm-hmm. So your ability to build buildings like that or retrofit buildings like that, that's a small opportunity in a big sea of challenges. I also think the other challenges that are out there is just the growing cost of doing business as a real estate person. Whether it's your interest expense, whether it's your property taxes, whether it's your insurance, whether it's your cost of labor, all of these costs are going up and up and up, and they're creeping their way into the real estate market writ large, irrespective of the asset class you're focused on or the geography that you're in. And so those challenges are creeping up. Ultimately, all of these challenges are coming together for just a collapse in transaction activity. We're just running at 25% of historical norms in terms of transaction volume. And one of the challenges are, most of us have teams of fighter pilots looking to do business, and teams of young people and middle-aged people, and keeping a peacetime army, during a period of time like this, engaged and focused. That's a challenge that's out there as well. But lots of challenges. But the opportunities will be there because we are the United States, and we're going to continue to have real estate needs and population growth and economic growth. And all of us are going to be able to continue to, find opportunities so long as we make it to the other side of this period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, the capital markets will return on some basis, that's for sure. But the question is who survives and then who takes advantage, for sure.
It will be very interesting. We watched coming out of '08, you had, I'll use the word winners and losers going into '08, and different firms came out and grew and succeeded out of that. This time around, it'll be interesting. I imagine track records of firms that have, high levels of office exposure are probably going to get dented and challenged. And it'll be interesting to see the way that our real estate investment business, looking back 5 years from now, 10 years from now, my gut is it won't be as profound as the GFC. Because in the GFC, you had this thing called banks, which pulled away, and then the asset management industry created all these real estate debt funds. So you have this new, huge industry that came out of it. I'm not quite sure if we're going to have an entire new industry that evolves out of this cycle. But change is constant.
So, Michael, let's segue into this whole discussion around leadership. Most of the people that I've interviewed have had a couple of people in their lives who have really made a difference. Who would those be in your life?
In my professional life, I've probably had 6 or 7 important mentors along the way. And everybody I've ever worked for, I've learned something from. Most of the time, good things, sometimes some bad things. Early in my career, I worked for someone who I deemed to be a bit of a yelling, screaming terrorist. And I realized early on, I was like, that is not effective.
Let's try to guess who that is, but no, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to leave that alone for the moment.
Yeah.
But one of the first guys I worked for was this guy named Rob Falzon, and I think Rob today, I believe he's chair or vice chair of Prudential Insurance out of Newark, and he was an investment banker for a short period of time at Prudential Securities, and he taught me that analytical rigor, hard work, and a calm demeanor were incredibly powerful tools. So I took that away from Rob, and I carry it to this day. And then I went over to Morgan Stanley, and I worked for this guy, Chris Niehaus, who taught me the virtue of patience. Gosh, I was not a patient young man. And he really helped me. Owen Thomas was there, and I got a chance to work with him, and I learned about fairness, just the incredible sense of fairness that people had when working with OT and have today. And there was another guy there who I know you know him, Devin Murphy, who just taught me there's no substitute for passion and high energy. And there were a handful of other people, but each of those people and others, I pulled something important away from them and tried to integrate it into my own psyche and my own persona, but there are elements of each of them that carry with me to this day, and I'd like to thank them, and I will.
Yeah. So, Michael, for those of you all in the audience who follow MasterMinds, my last few interviews have been what I term to be the next generation of leadership. People like Luke Petherbridge, who runs Link Logistics, Dallas Tanner, who runs Invitation Homes. Just interviewed Danny Queenan, who runs a big part of CB. You stepping in and running Crow Holdings as you have over the last 7 years. It's unfair. It's an unfair question to ask of a younger person, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want to continue to create opportunity for the people that work here by continuing to grow the institution. I mean, our mission, at the end of the day, the mission of Crow Holdings is to create opportunity for the people that work here. And if you're going to do that, you've got to create growth. If you don't have growth as a company, what happens is the old guys stick around. You know, you keep some of the young guys who want to get trained, and all the folks in the middle, all the gals and guys in the middle ultimately work their way out, and you don't create opportunity for them. And so ultimately create opportunity, it's to continue to grow the overall enterprise that's Crow Holdings. And that's what I want my legacy to be. And we've made some progress in that regard, and we'll continue to do that. I also want to work really hard, and at least to date, I think it's been successful, but I want to maintain this word called culture. You have some words behind you that I bet you are part of your culture or your mission statement. But I'd say culture is more you feel it rather than you read it. It's part of who you are. But this is a place of trust, and it's a place of sharing and collaboration. It's not a place of control. It's a different kind of environment, and I want to work really hard. And it's come pretty naturally to maintain that culture that we've got. So maintain that culture and continue to grow is what I want my legacy to be. Mm-hmm. Within that, on the topic of leadership, we have today, across Crow Holdings today, there are really three of us that everything kind of rolls up to. And that means there are three people who can be the bottleneck with respect to growth and opportunity.
Right.
And so what I'm really focused on for the next generation below me is to grow that from three. I always use the word the knights at the round table, but I don't want 3 knights at the round table. I want 8 knights at the round table, because imagine what we can do if we have 8 trusting, collaborative people, all responsible for a different area of the business, all trying to grow. What can we do for the people that work here, and how much opportunity can we provide in the years to come? That's what I'm focused on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and growth just leads to so many things. It leads to future economic success for people, career opportunities, the impact that those people can make in their communities, to their families. It really is ultimately kind of a self-perpetuating ecosystem for sure. So makes a lot of sense. Well, Michael, this has been great. I can't tell you how much I enjoy these conversations with you, and kudos to you for the great career you've had and the career that's still ahead of you. So I really appreciate the time, my friend. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's always good to see you, and I look forward to seeing you offline soon enough.
Yep, absolutely.